I think people are still joining in, so let's wait 1 or 2 minutes for additional participants to come in. We will begin momentarily. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Amir Sawani, and I'm an investment officer with the Global Municipal and Environmental Infra team at the IFC, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to all of you. As most of you would be working in the waste sector or are affiliated with the waste sector in some capacity or interested in the waste sector, I think I don't need to impress upon you the importance of circularity, but I will share some figures just to keep things in perspective. Global waste production is expected to increase from 2.1 billion tons currently to about 3.4 billion tons by 2050, which is about a 60 to 70% increase over a period of 30 years. And most of this will be coming from low income countries, where 90% of the waste continues to be burnt or openly dumped. And this has adverse consequences for vulnerable communities, especially for vulnerable communities which live close to dump sites, which are involved in the informal waste sector, or or who just belong to the low socioeconomic strata of society. And the environment is also paying a high price. Oceans are choking on plastic waste. Methane emissions from landfills and dump sites lead to significant greenhouse gas emissions. 1.6 billion tons of CO2 is produced from inadequate treatment and disposal of waste, which is 4 to 5% of global emissions. And this is expected to increase by another million tons by 2025. And 92 billion tons of resources follow a linear economy path. So imagine if these things were recycled. It would not only provide essential components which feed in various supply chains, but also would reduce the waste and adverse consequences associated with it. So in this presentation, we will try to understand that how can circular waste solutions be implemented in emerging markets. Before we begin, I will briefly run you through our agenda for today. We will start with the opening remarks from Jose Uribe, who is the operations director at ISWA. Then we will briefly hear about the structure and organization of the IFC and the World Bank Group from Ayo Tunde Usunkunle. Ayo is a senior investment officer with the Global Municipal and Environmental Infra team at the IFC. He is also our global lead for the IFC Circularity Plus platform. Then James Michelson, or Jim, our senior waste sector specialist, will talk about IFC's waste business and our experience in this sector. IO will then introduce our Circularity Plus platform, which we have launched last year to help companies operating across the waste value chain develop sustainable waste solutions. Jim will then discuss a few engagements under our platform and introduce Pranshu Singhal, founder of Karo Sambhav Private Limited, which is a company very actively participating in the circular economy solutions in India. Pranshu will talk about the challenges of circularity and how to enable circularity through EPR. We will then conclude with the key takeaways and a brief Q&A. If you have any questions during the presentation, please drop them in the chat and we will answer them towards the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I will hand over to you, Jose. Jose, we can't hear you, so just checking if
I'm
your
sorry.
mic is open. Yeah.
I apologize. Once again, to start again, I would like to welcome you all to this ISWAN IFC webinar. I'm from the International Solid Waste Association, as very well pointed out by Amir. We are, of course, in the business of promoting professional and sustainable waste management around the world, and of course, the transition to a circular economy. And it is that second part of our mission that brings us here today. I was looking at the people joining us as they walked into the room, or at least virtually. And I was again once impressed by the number of different countries and different regions represented in our visitors today. And I think this is very emblematic of our work here at ISWA. We have a wide, very global network of waste management professionals and stakeholders who are here basically to do exactly that, help us around in our mission. And that's also one of the reasons that we're very proud to have IFC on board as a member. They provide one of those key magic ingredients that is always needed for any of these waste management development projects, and that is namely the funding. One of the things that is also in my card I see here is my background in industrial design and engineering. And one of the things that I wanted to mention today, of course, is that one of the things you learn within innovation is the fact that ideas are a good start, but that's about it. So when you have a good idea, you need to make sure that it is a good idea. And for that, of course, you need to prove that. And you need to develop that idea, and you have to be able to make it work in a financial sense. And that, I think, is one of the key essential things that we will be talking about also today, which is how to develop those good ideas, make sure that we mentioned how we pick those ideas and how you get that to an investable proposition that can be, of course, supported by the IFC and the other international organizations that deal with this. So I'm very curious to hear the IFC story. So I will hand you back to Amir, and I wish you all a great webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jose. So over to you, Ayo.
Thank you very much, Amir, and thank you very much, Jose. So my name is Ayo. I'm currently a senior investment officer with the IFC based in DC. I'm leading our Circularity Plus platform, which we will talk a lot about during the presentation. So just to give a quick overview of the IFC, we're part of the World Bank Group, where the entity essentially that focuses and supports private sector investments in the countries that the World Bank Group operates in. There are other sections of the World Bank Group that provide all other different types of other services and engagements with countries, but IFC is the primary entity that focuses on financing companies and to some extent subnational entities in the emerging markets and in the countries that the World Bank Group operates in. Next slide, please. And so just a quick overview of and quick introduction. I mean, for a number of people that already know, that's great. But for those that don't know, it's just a quick overview of the kind of instruments that we use to invest in the countries that we operate in. So primarily we invest in companies with loans, equities, or when we also raise capital for companies in those countries, and blended finance where we use donor funding to support investments in these countries, and some other types of derivative instruments and structures, and trade finance. Primarily, the concept is as an institution, we support companies with investments at the different levels of capital that a company might need for the projects that they need to implement. We also have an upstream side of IFC that really supports companies at an early stage to develop projects and to promote the design and implementation of different types of projects within these countries, and we work closely with the World Bank Group to help address any regulatory or policy concerns that may need to be implemented in these countries. At the upstream level, the whole idea is really to go upstream in the real sense of it, to develop these projects that IFC can ultimately invest in these countries, to support private sector clients. And of course, there's also our advisory arm that really supports the implementation of different types of advisory solutions to companies in the countries that we operate in. And then the development of PPP, public-private partnership type projects that will advance investment projects in the markets that we operate in. The idea here is, as an institution, as IFC as an institution, we can really support companies at the investment level, developing the projects at the upstream level, and then provide some level of advice and support to the companies that we work in to develop these projects. And there's the asset management, which really mobilizes the equity capital for the projects that we invest in. Next slide. And just a quick overview on our breadth. We're the largest global development institution focused on private sector in emerging markets. We've committed over $285 billion in companies across the world. We're a AAA rated entity, and we support all types of investment instruments as may be required in the capital structure of the company. And the infrastructure and the energy business, which I'm part of, provides about 20% of the commitment from last year. Portfolio is currently about 65 billion, and new commitments come to about 13 billion each year. Our investments spread across all around the world in all the regions that we'll typically see private sector companies that are growing and that are supporting the mandate to improve private sector participation and the climate. Thank you. Next slide. I'll hand it over to Jim to talk quickly on our waste business.
Okay, Amir, am I good to go?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jim Michelson. I'm one of 3 industry specialists for waste. We work globally, supporting the regions and our global team, developing solid waste and trying to have an increasing footprint in the solid waste space. I support IO and the global team in implementing our new Circularity Plus concept, which you'll hear more about. So just looking at what have we done and what are we looking to do in the solid waste management sector. IFC has a proven track record across multiple developing markets globally, with total commitments of over 1.4 billion. It's split between about 700 million own accounts and mobilization. As Io mentioned, a big part of our mandate is mobilizing capital. We're not going in it to crowd out the private sector, so we bring a lot of capital with us, and that's a big part of our mandate. As you can see here, a big part of our business has been waste to energy. That's in the traditional sense, waste to energy, incineration based, but that's changing. That was really demand driven because it was capital intensive, but with all the discussion around circularity and waste to value, we're really seeing that shifting in a couple of different ways. First, waste to energy, it's a bigger game than just incineration based. It's waste to energy in terms of anaerobic digestion, of municipal waste, of industrial waste, and ag feedstock. So the pie is getting bigger in the sense because that definition is increasing, but also really we're seeing in the circular space a lot of demand for areas we have not seen in the past, like waste recycling, plastic recycling, PET, bottle-to-bottle facilities, and e-waste. All different, e-waste, you'll hear more about that from Karasambhav. It's a big part of our business. So I think the trend is waste to value, and we'll talk more about that. Next slide, please. Okay, here we go. All right. So where does IFC work? We really work across the value chain, but really in the past it's really been on the and our focus really is today that where the money comes in, where our investment is really focused on the last three bullets, or the last three circles, which is basically the processing and separation, energy recovery, and disposal. But we are seeing more that we're looking at more integrated spaces, and our clients want to extract more value. What they want to utilize, they see their waste streams or the control of waste streams as a value, and so it may still be in many cases require a tipping fee or processing fee, but they can extract more, they can get more value and more return if they're able to leverage uh, pull revenues out of these different waste streams. So that's what we're seeing now. We are looking more in the collection and transport space as part of an integrated process, and really in the creating an enabling environment, both in the collection and transport and the municipal solid waste area with industries, local governments, municipalities, and national governments. And what I mean by that is it really we need to have the regulations in place in some of the things like EPR, uh, bottle return schemes, enforcement of solid waste management laws. And we have typically not got involved in these upstream areas, but we're finding that we need to work with our World Bank colleagues to create this enabling environment. And in the collection and transport piece, I mentioned that because it, getting separation at source enables and unlocks the rest of this these other three areas of the value chain. So if we can get source separation, it really makes the rest, as you know, as most of the people on this call, your solid waste management experts, getting that separation at source, the organics out and separate, just unlocks everything and makes the value recovery work a lot better. So next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned this before, the waste to value solutions. We're seeing this on multiple touch points. First of all, first and foremost, entities are looking to backward integrate across the value chain. They're looking to get into new areas, and this is driven by different reasons. As I mentioned, waste companies are integrating forward to seek additional value from the waste they management, basically to extract additional value and to make and to divert also. You know, if they have a waste to energy facility or a landfill, diverting that waste frees up additional capacity and additional possible for revenue streams. On the manufacturing sides, they're also being pressured through their sustainability goals, and more importantly, their consumer base. You know, this is particularly true of the millennial age group. They're really wanting less single-use products. They want more circular products, and they want products and packaging with recycled content. And the manufacturers are hearing this loud and clear. So they're saying, okay, what do I need to do in order to meet these sustainability goals? And it all gets back to locking up high quality material supply. So they've got to, and the only way they can do this is to backwardly integrate. So we're working with our manufacturing colleagues and manufacturing clients to help them do that and pair them with waste companies. And then the third group that really is enabling this circular economy is, as I mentioned, the regulatory structure. So government and national governments and local governments both want to see create more policies that enable this circular environment. And as we know, regulation is a key piece of this. So we're seeing this as a huge opportunity for us to develop new business models. Next slide, please.
Over to Io for the
Thank
intro
you.
to the platform. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Jim. And to just pick up from there, what's the history of the platform? From the experience and the exposure we had with all the clients that we work with, the resounding message we've gotten from a lot of the clients has been how to move along this value chain, the circular value chain, in such a way that they're able to generate value and generate income and generate, in the finance world, we call it EBITDA, generates upside from the waste that is being collected. And the basis of that is, as a result of that, from a lot of those conversations, we set up the Circularity Plus platform. The platform is really designed to support waste companies and select municipal governments to implement circular solutions along the value chain that Jim described earlier. So from the sorting and recycling all the way to from the collection of the waste through the sorting of the waste to some level of recovery that can be done either through energy or other means for that waste, and ultimately supporting these waste companies to be able to generate carbon credits. What we've seen is from a carbon credit standpoint, and which Jim will talk about later in the presentation, there is some value that waste companies can generate, and there's particular value from the waste business itself. And so the intent of the platform is really to support waste companies through this entire value chain, such that they're then generating value from the waste that is being collected. The challenge being in many of the countries that we operate in, just the traditional model of taking the waste and just throwing it to a landfill, while it might be the cheapest solution, but it's not that many times there are other things that can be done to that waste that is being collected to support the income and the revenue generation of the waste companies, which is beneficial to the company as well as beneficial for the environment and for the climate and for the climate agenda. So the platform is really designed to address this. The support that we provide really covers four main areas: business model development, figuring out what's the best business model that I can use for this type of waste that I collect. What's the market? How do I understand how the market works? How do I understand what's happening in the market? What's the technical analysis that needs to be done for this business to actually work? And to understand the regulatory framework that the business operates in. And so with a combination of those two, which is looking at the entire value chain and looking at how to develop the business, we really think we've put together a platform that is well suited to support waste companies in generating additional value and generating value and for the business for the businesses in this sector. Next slide, please. And so to give a full view of what the platform can do and how it can support, the intent of the platform is really to support companies that are operating in this sector. The intent of the platform is also to support companies in all the countries that IFC currently operates in and IFC is able to operate in as part of the World Bank Group. So essentially, there is no regional focus. As long as the World Bank Group can operate in that country, we are able to support companies in that country. The second really important thing is to mention that the intent of the platform is to support IFC's investment activities in country. And so typically we would expect to have a target minimum investment size and understand the context of the region, the level of impact for that project. But the goal, important to mention, is to support bankable projects in the countries that we operate in. So will we look at opportunities? Do we have minimum size of opportunities? Typically, we would say yes, because ultimately the intent is to find those investment opportunities that IFC can support in the countries that we operate in. Typically, we would expect some level of cost sharing with the client that we're working with. And the funds really is designed that the funds that we have is really designed to address the four main areas that we talked about earlier, which are market intelligence, understanding technical analysis, regulatory analysis, and business model development. So the whole idea is really to help understand, how do I go into this market, or how do I go into this sector in such a way that the business actually works. And of course, the sectoral focus is really to accelerate waste to value solutions. That's really a quick overview of the platform. Of course, we'll be happy to answer questions that you may have on the platform. Next slide.
Over to Jim for carbon credits.
Sure. So an interesting outcome of us launching the Circularity Plus platform was that we were getting a lot of interest from our clients and potential clients around carbon credits and monetizing carbon credits. So I'm going to give you a little background on why that is. Not a lot. Just, this is not meant to be an explanation of the carbon credit market, but just why is there interest, and why is the waste sector so important in the context of this? Well, you may have heard about CDM, a clean development mechanism, in the past. It kind of ended in 2012, limped along. People were getting really low values for their carbon credits, but there were a lot of waste projects out there. A lot of them flaring off landfill gas was a typical project in our space. Some generate electricity, but they limped along. And then what happened was COP26 in Glasgow in late 2021. And what it did was it basically settled on rules for global carbon markets under Paris alignment. And you'll hear this a lot, Article 6. And what Article 6 allowed countries to do was they could meet their national climate commitments, or NDCs, using carbon credits as part of it. So this voluntary market that basically CDM kind of has been morphing into, the VCM, and you may have heard of the Verified Carbon Standard, VCS, or VERA, or Gold Standard. Those are two of the larger ones, but there are other ones like ACS and some other ones internationally. But what happened was, because of this change of COP26, the carbon credits and private and interest in carbon markets roared back in 2022, and the price started to climb. And so that is very interesting for our clients, both the ones with carbon credits or projects, but also those that are looking to get into spaces that are expanding into spaces where they didn't have carbon credits before. So, and then what also happened at COP26 was 109 countries signed up for a global methane pledge, which intends to slash emissions by 30%. So these two combinations, the Article 6 and the global methane pledge, has really reawakened the voluntary carbon credits market, but in particular in the waste sector. Why is that? Because a lot of our credits are in the solid waste sector, as you know, are methane driven, or methane avoidance. So, and as you know, methane has is at least 21 times more potent than CO2. So it's the projects in our sector are very interesting for buyers. And the second reason is it's very accurate measurement. Most of our sectors, most of our subsectors anyway, have very accurate ways to measure landfill production and flow rate. So buyers have a high degree of confidence. And then finally, what's huge about this space, it has a huge impact to financial viability of projects. I mean, we're seeing project IRRs increase up to 18%. and on average, if they can incorporate the issuance of carbon credits. So the big takeaway here is that Circularity Plus can really help companies get to that next level and navigate this very dynamic and changing market, which you know, we don't claim to be experts, but we're trying to keep our finger on the pulse and help our clients navigate it through this platform. Thanks. Next slide. Okay, so what have we done under Circularity Plus? Some really, to date, we've done a couple of super interesting engagements. First, Elemental Holdings. It's a project based in Poland, which is developing projects for issuance of carbon credits for platinum group metals, which is really end of life catalytic converters and end of life battery recycling, as well as e-waste printed circuit board recycling, and trying to issue carbon credits around that. It's a challenging space to issue carbon credits, but it has, you know, these have a big impact, not in terms of quantity, but in terms of types. Secondly, we're talking to Veolia and Latin America, working on a really interesting bioconversion technology, which is transforming organic waste, municipal organic waste streams, into protein and oil for animal feed. So this is another example of you know, Veolia has a lot of expertise, but this is an area that they're pushing the envelope on, and this is where Circularity Plus can really be driven. And then finally, Karasambov, which we'll hear more of. So I won't go into too much detail here, but basically it's evaluating technological and commercial feasibility for establishing multi-material recycling plants across India. Let me now, is Pranchu ready to go? Okay.
Pranshu is here.
Well,
If Ray,
yeah,
sorry,
let me go ahead
one
and
thing. Yeah, one thing,
yeah.
sorry. If Ray, you can give access to Pranshu for the mic and video, so he can go in after this as well. Now over to you, Jim, for the intro.
Okay, great. Well, I've known Pranchu for a couple of years, and just been incredible. And IFC we've been trying to figure out how to work with Karasambov. Karasambov is really the leading EPR and circular economy leader in recycling in India. They're working across the entire value chain, but really got their start in e-waste, really putting together quite an impressive program there, and now we're trying to leverage that across multiple sectors. We recently signed this engagement with Karasambov to evaluate the commercial, financial, and technical feasibility for this multi-material recycling plants throughout India, and and as part of this, which is what is one of the mandates of or one of the things we need for the Circularity Plus platform, we see line of sight to an investment, and we hope as a result of this study we'll be able to invest in Karasambov. So today we're joined by the founder of Karasambov, Pranchu Singhal, and I'm going to pass it over to him for I hope a very engaging discussion.
Over to you, Pranshu. Ray, were you able to give the microphone and video access to Pranshu?
Hold on a second. I'm trying to sort it out.
Okay.
I think Pranshu has now the access.
Yes, thank you.
Over to
And
you, Pranshu. Yeah.
yeah, thank you, Amir. And it's a delight really to be present here. And thank you, Jim, for a super interesting dialogue that you have initiated in today. So, really looking forward to this dialogue. So just to, share with all of you, Karusambam is an organization which was set up in 2017 to drive circular economy at scale. And we started with the sector of electronics, but then gradually moved into multiple other categories. So if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So what we are trying to address is the whole ecosystem of circularity. And our focus is more on material circularity rather than extension of life or multiple other ways of driving circular changes. So we are truly focused on how do we enable better collection systems, because majority of the products do not find a way back into formal recycling. And that continues to be a very, very significant challenge, not just in India, but across the world, especially emerging markets, where municipality systems are primarily catering to household waste rather than complex waste streams. The second area of work that we have tried to address is quality recycling. And quality is the critical word here, because one can recycle, but are we able to get recyclates which are truly going back to create similar type of products that the recyclates came from? And today, this is a big question mark. In many cases, we are able to downgrade materials, but very, very few possibilities exist in terms of reutilizing the material back into similar type of products. And then the third is the secondary material. So our approach is to really work on all these three things. And the biggest challenges that we are today seeing in this space include, uh, like if I am an individual, we are all struggling to find systems where we can go and get away with our waste. Uh, and one of the big things, challenges that we are seeing is people are expecting, possibilities of participation to be very easy. Like today, we are able to deliver products at home, you know, in a very similar way, people are expecting that can the product be picked up, end of life product device can be picked up from my home. So this is a very big stark difference which has come up in the last few years, because with the emergence of e-commerce platforms in all walks of life, people are now expecting that even waste has to be picked up from my home. And in addition to that, I need to be paid for it. So these are two very, very critical challenges which the systems are facing today. And what is super important is, can we bring in the ease of participation? Beyond ease of participation, what people are also expecting is trustworthy systems. If we are making efforts to participate in recycling, is the system coming back and telling us that they have truly recycled? So people are looking at very specific feedback on their products, on their participation, that information loop gets closed. Now, what is happening in this space largely is, while there is a broader understanding that collection systems need to be developed, there is a very deep lack of financing available for this space, including countries where EPR has been mandated. So, and I'll come and discuss this at length, but the kind of funding that has gone to develop channels across is very, very little. And this is a space which needs to be completely rethought. How do we ensure that people can participate, and at a population scale? We are not talking of some pilot here and there or some collection points. At a population scale level, can we truly participate? The second big space, challenge, and this is again multi-sectoral uh, slide, is on recycling systems. Even if we end up collecting, how do we recycle? Do we have quality recycling systems? If I talk of e-waste, there are so many materials for which we truly don't have any answer. Let's take example of screen. Today we have no answer of how to recycle screens at a country level. And when I'm saying screens, I'm talking of the display glass, the display mechanism. How do we recycle it? So there, or we talk of certain types of plastics. Again, no option to recycle in a way that it can, I can extract material to go back into a similar product. Even if their recycling capacities are emerging, they are limited to very few parts of the country. which makes it very difficult to collect and then move from a logistics point of view. Then when we are talking from an offtake point of view, that there are companies like Jim mentioned earlier who are now planning to integrate recycled content in their product. There is another challenge which is emerging because they are expecting a similar type of material to be provided on a consistent basis. Now, waste is heterogeneous. You don't collect waste of just one variety. Models change, brands change. You always have a heterogeneous mix. So with this heterogeneity, how do you deliver materials which are homogeneous from an output point of view? That becomes a huge challenge. And in absence of proper recycling, in absence of proper collection systems, this becomes a huge, huge challenge. So, and again, all these things are really interlinked. Lack of sustainable finance. I'm not talking of one-time investments. I'm not talking just of capex, but how do we keep these systems running? The original idea of EPR was to bring sustainable finance because it is being construed as a compliance cost. And so it has its own unique challenges. Let's go to the next slide, please. So what Karosambhav is doing is we started our activities from electronics. We started creating systems for collection, recycling, secondary material use in electronics, but then gradually added more verticals. We started working on plastics packaging with a group of almost 30 companies. Last year, we started batteries, lithium ion, lead acid, as well as alkaline batteries. We also started a vertical on float glass. This year, we have added a vertical on tires. The idea is that across all sectors, there are at least a few organizations who are willing to do the right thing. And how do we work with them? How do we start that sectoral journey? Because each and every sector is huge, but that journey of understanding the sector, the issues related to that sector, they are very unique. So that journey needs to be started. One of other things that we are trying to do is on what I call as a circular economy industry creation effort. Now, and this is a global challenge. There is no taxonomy, there is no common way of working. There are standards which are emerging. So there are very different definitions which are being applied in circularity. Everyone has their own meaning, no common models of funding. And this is emerging as a big global challenge. I was participating in uh, the Global Circular Economy Forum in Helsinki a couple of weeks back. And this emerged as a huge space that how do we ensure that there is symmetry in the language that is being utilized? How do we make sure that there are models which are very well understood from a finance point of view? Or what kind of standards are we really talking here? What does, for example, inclusion mean for everyone? What does clean supply chain mean? So those are things where Karosambhav has been working, and we are thankful to IFC to be a supporter, advisor to us right from the stage of our inception. We have been working with IFC in this regard. Let's go further, please. So in terms of enabling circularity, the very first step that we have focused on is what I call as population scale collection systems. We today collect waste in over 100 cities, and we reach out to these 100 cities by having physical collection points in over 60 cities, where we have physical presence, we have people, and from these cities we cater, we reach out to multiple channels, we go to households, we go to office complexes, whom I have called as bulk consumers here, to retailers, repair centers, aggregators, post-formalizing. But what is super important is, are we making it easy for people to participate? Because if people are finding it difficult, then waste is not going to be collected. And are we instilling trust at a very fundamental level that if people are participating, they know the system works? Let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so these are just some photographs to give you an idea of what is it that we are talking. So in the first image, you see our focus on households. So we have mobile vans which are going door to door, which are going to households. People can request a pickup. we have a planned route system by which we allow collection of waste from households. We are also onboarding or working with a whole range of retail stores today in the country where we are enabling collection from retail. Apart from that, we are working with offices, educational institutions, where we do regular campaigns, bring people on board, and then via that enable collection. Repair shops is another big channel. And then, historically, we have worked a lot with what I call as formalized aggregators. So these are organizations or individuals working in the informal sector. And with our first engagement with IFC, we worked a lot on formalizing. We also had ILO on board with who supported in what is formalization, and a whole range of companies were created. They could be partnership firms, they could be, all types of legal entities in which aggregators created an entity, and then we started working with them in a formal way. But ensuring that every payment is digitally paid, all taxes are paid in time. So those sort of very strong balances were created, checks and balances were created for working with the informal sector. Let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah. What we also work on is right from day one, and this is from 2017, we invested in developing a technology platform because one thing was absolutely critical. And I come from a Nokia and Microsoft background. One thing was absolutely clear to us when we were setting up, that if we do not make it possible for people to peek in and see every single aspect, we may end up with a very, very, very serious problem. In a few years. So our focus was to bring full accountability, full transparency in the whole value chain. At any point in time, organizations who are working with us can see, understand what's happening, where is the waste, where does it move. And this allows us to generate what we call as proof of execution. So any organization, if they want to know what has happened in their supply chain, we provide them a very detailed set of document for every single transaction, by which every single aspect is traced. And this has become the backbone of our system. We have this system running in all the sectors that we are operating in, and it really allows that client-specific data to be generated, client-specific risks to be mapped, client-specific, every single thing that can be done is already present on this platform, from a information or from a risk or from a let's say cost perspective. Every single thing is available on this platform today. Let's go further, please. So coming to what is it, what are the biggest challenges for an organization like us? So initially, when we started as an organization, we pivoted a lot on EPR, and with the hope that EPR will truly bring in the right funds, which exist as a gap today, because collection systems were absent, continue to be absent. I'm not saying things have changed dramatically. They have, but not dramatically. So the idea was, can EPR bring in the right amount of money to create collection channels, to enable more investment going into recycling, so that recycling ecosystem grows, it becomes a lot better. And then most importantly, secondary material space. However, while we have seen a significant progress in India, uh, I would say there is a lot of ground yet to be covered. And we need to rethink our approach if we are to solve. One of the biggest challenges that I have seen is, the compliance mindset issue, which I like to call it that any brand which is today being a part of the system and is being pushed to drive if any brand, then compliance mindset is a huge challenge. So and this is something which is happening has gone down. Sorry, I'm facing a network issue. Just give me a second, please.
Maybe we can switch off the video to save bandwidth.
No, I've changed the network. I think it should be okay now. So the whole issue is that, how do we stop this race to the bottom? Because prices at which EPR operates is so below the reasonable price that how do you, we are struggling, or, most organizations are struggling. How do you finance collection systems? How do you finance good recycling, quality recycling? From my point of view, I'm seeing it as an issue of compliance mindset. And if we were to just invert and look at it at circular activities more as an innovation, I think there will be enough funding which is available. Because compliance is a cost, everyone wants to minimize it. Innovation is going to lead to market creation, so there is enough money available for it. So that mindset is super critical. And this has caused a huge challenge in terms of financing circularity, because EPR has always been constituted that this is an instrument, a good policy instrument to drive changes. Then another thing which has come up, and this is my point of view, is if we enable radical public disclosures, which means even if you have EPR, but if the information is not disclosed to public, how much financing is a company putting? How much money have they put on a per kg basis to drive setup of collection systems? I think if we start asking these questions, if we put this data in public domain, then I think we don't have to have a very strong, how do I say, today, it can create a lot of deterrence because public, there are enough researchers out there who can decipher is the amount of financing right or wrong. Apart from that, another two big challenges which I'd like to highlight here are, one is reporting. How do you report? And are there good material balance tools available at a country level so that reporting can be done in a way that it is scientific enough? And at the end of it, enforcement is super critical for EPR to work. If enforcement is not there, you know, it's always a free riding game. And today we are evidencing that at a very, very significant level. So it's super important that surveillance and enforcement become a very important part of any regime where circularity, if the system is dependent on role of government, so enforcement becomes super critical. So coming back to how have we worked with IFC? Our support, we work with IFC first of all on the uh, on the aspect of formalizing the informal sector. That was our very first problem statement, wherein we worked deeply in over 30 cities, went to informal sector, created systems for formalizing them. This is over 4 years back, but it created a very strong model, which has now become the norm. That if anyone is to work with the informal sector, then this is the kind of norm. Along with IFC also came International Labour Organization, which started writing standards on or ways of working on how to work with informal sector, what kind of safe working practices are required, what kind of ethics need to be followed. So it has been a huge benefit. And in the present work that we are doing with IFC, the whole focus is on how does one finance these systems? Because population scale can only happen if there is sustainable finance. So a lot of work is now going in that space, as well as figuring out, difficult questions on recycling. So emerging markets will have a bit different recycling questions uh, than the traditional models where products are just crushed and then materials have to be taken out. So we are trying to figure out what are the right recycling models at a country level today in India.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Prashant. Prashno. So just to wrap it up, in terms of what IFC is able to support with, we, through the platform, support waste companies through Circularity Plus platform, support along the sorting and recycling, energy recovery, low impact collection, and carbon credit market access. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, when we look at this support that we provide to waste companies, there are four main areas that we provide the support: business model development, market intelligence, technical analysis, and regulatory framework assessment. So that's really the crux of the platform. That's how we support waste companies. And we're, of course, very happy to answer any questions that may come up. That I think there are a few questions that have come up on the chat. For some of the questions about our contact details, they're provided here. I think we'll also circulate the presentation at the end of the meeting, either today or tomorrow. So you would have all our details and can reach out for also have a discussion to kick off how we can support you.
Okay, I can go on with the questions. So the first one that we have is, what's the minimum ticket size for projects? And how does a waste company or entity get in touch with IFC? So I think you've addressed the second one.
Yes, so you can get in touch through contact details here. In terms of minimum ticket size, we typically, it really depends on the sector that you're looking at. Depends on the country, depends on the environmental impact, and depends on a lot of factors. We typically see transactions on the higher side of about where IFC is investing at least 10, 15, $20 million in a project. But it really depends on several other factors that would lead to assess. So a conversation certainly is something that would need to have with you to understand what's the project you're looking at, where is it, what's the size of the project, and how do we figure out how IFC can support.
Thanks, Ayo. Luca, do you want to go for the next question? Okay, maybe I can go. So the next question is, the scope is about solid waste only. Is this a conscious choice at this moment with the possible addition of wet waste segment as well? And what is the maximum tenor of loan/investment IFC envisages? And is there any benchmarking study conducted for target price return for each dollar of investment?
So, I mean, let me go back from the end of the question. So it really depends on the country, depends on the sector, depends on many factors. So we can't just give a minimum tenure size, but I think one thing to keep in mind is when it's a project finance, where the financing to the project relies entirely on the revenue that project is generating, we typically can go longer for project finance, but then for corporate finance, we typically can go shorter and shorter. But it really depends on many factors, and I think a conversation will be very helpful to address any questions when you're looking at the particular project. In terms of solid waste, I think that's the intent, is really designed to support waste companies in the sector. But of course, the entire value chain is something that we can look at. What are the other types of waste that are being collected, and how is value expected to be derived from that value chain?
So the next question is, what is IFC's view on plastic credits? Has this been an area of consideration?
Yes, so it certainly has been an area of consideration, but I'd let Jim provide some context about that.
Yes, we're looking at it right now in the context of India, and we've seen it in other places. I would say we're still analyzing it. I think it's very specific to the country and the program that it's selected, but this is a very intriguing revenue enhancer. I don't think it can drive, here again, I don't think it can drive the whole business, but perhaps could be a factor. I would Pranchu, I don't know if you can add anything there based on your experience in what are you seeing in India? I know there are plastic credits that are being discussed at the government level and private sector. So go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, the way I am looking at is plastic credit scheme is working out to be a lot better than EPR in terms of if I were to look at market pricing, the amount of money which is being paid, by brands on EPR versus money which is available as plastic credits, plastic credit wins by a huge margin. So it gives a lot of respite to organizations who are working and creating business models at a grassroots level. And what we are also noticing is that many of them are wanting to now shift, instead of providing EPR services to a plastic credit service. So it seems to be working much better than EPR model.
Thanks, Pranchu. The next question
I would
is,
just very quickly, just one thing I was thinking. One of the things we discussed, Pranchu, is like you don't want to start the market off. Like it's good to have the collection centers in place, and if you introduce plastic credits too early, it could. I don't know. Could you have to be very careful that you have the infrastructure in place? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So again, all the things that I'm saying is considering that, things are very well balanced, enforcement is there. Even if plastic credits have to work, surveillance systems have to be very strong so that, there is no let's say wrong governance mechanisms or misdoing, because all these systems are very, very, very prone to wrongdoing and corruption.
Yeah.
The next question is, what is the ideal project stage to seek IFC consideration?
So from the time, so I think that's what the platform is designed to do, to support companies with. So if you're looking at a project that is in the development stage, I think it's certainly worth a conversation with us to understand where in that development stage you are and how IFC can support through the Circularity Plus platform. What we will do is, if you've done a feasibility studies, if you haven't, if you have done a feasibility study, we can look at what the next stage of analysis that needs to be done for that project and support you with that. And of course, the whole idea to keep in mind is certainty and clarity on the investment that will be done, which IFC will also provide financing to. So the entire value chain that you're looking at for developing and investing in the project, I think you can start speaking to us once you figure out the idea of, once you figured out what the project will look like and you figured out all the next steps that need to be done. But ultimately, the intent from the platform side is to invest in the project. And we need to have clarity on that from an investment standpoint.
Thanks, Ayo. The next question is, what is IFC's preferred use of proceeds and preferred capital partners to support projects?
So use of proceeds are always from our side to invest in capital infrastructure or capital expenditure. So we will only finance investments in project from an investment standpoint. On the advisory and on the platform to support the companies to invest in those projects, we can support through some level of advisory for the projects, for analysis work that needs to be done. As we discussed earlier, business model development, technical analysis, or any work that needs to be done from a knowledge standpoint for developing that project, we can support with the advisory platform also, but also provide investments in the capital infrastructure for the project.
Next question, where do investments in waste to hydrogen fit within the IFC portfolio? And are you looking at this potential option as a game changer in the field from a circularity and economic perspective?
Absolutely, and that's so we have a team that focuses on hydrogen, and of course, if that's a project that you're looking at currently, we certainly can make the connection with it. But it's certainly a key area of growth that we're looking at internally.
Next question, could you please share an example of IFC supporting waste collection and transportation initiatives?
So I think we would also share one of our the platform, the two-pager that we put together for the platform. So some of the companies that we've supported in the past and currently are supporting are have significant and maybe not too significant, but they have sizable waste collection businesses. That said, the focus of the platform is to support value-added services for waste that is being collected. So if the intent is only to look at waste collection, I think what we would have to engage with you is how do we improve, or what needs to be done to improve the level of service that is being provided, or what other services does the company provide to address other sides of the waste business?
Thank you. This was the last one. So I think we're just 3 minutes over, but thank you to all the participants for joining in and to all the speakers for contributing. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you, Pranchu.
Thank you, Pransh.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Pranchu. Bye.
Bye.